Hello, my name is Eric Hansen, and I was hoping to share with you my ideas in response to the movie Under the Gun. It was this past October 21st, 2016, when the Santa Barbara Coalition Against Gun Violence partnered with a number of other nonprofits in Santa Barbara, and they had a viewing of the film at the beautiful Marjorie Luke Theater. I was very happy to be able to attend in the evening. I, like many of the partners and members of the Coalition Against Gun Violence, identify as a peace person, a justice person, uh, seeking solutions for healthier communities, happier communities, um, using nonviolent means, and because I'm interested in those issues, it led me to find out that Sandy Hook, the Newtown event, as well as many other high-profile shootings, are faked and fabricated events. So I hope that doesn't prevent you right there from turning off this video. And in fact, I hope it rather stirs you to be curious about what I might have to say. And as always, please don't take anything that I say at face value. Research it. I hope it stirs something within you to do your own research and look into the events. I don't mean to convince anyone of anything. That being said, we were at the end of the film allowed to ask questions, and I submitted one. And I was very happy that it was read by Tony Wellen, the chairperson, founder of Santa Barbara Coalition Against Gun Violence. My question, which I submitted in writing, was, in essence, for the elected officials that were present, including Hannah Beth Jackson and Doss Williams. Candidate Salud Carbajal was also there. He did win the election. At this time, he was just a candidate to replace Lois Capps. And the question was for the elected officials to please respond to the best evidence that has already been exposed and provided, showing that many of these shooting events are fictional. So that was wonderful that it was read. And unfortunately, it was dodged by the elected officials who it was directed to. Rather, they allowed Bob Weiss, the father or alleged father of an alleged victim and of the Isla Vista shootings, which were fictional. And unfortunately, he did not address the best evidence either, but he pointed people to watch poor YouTube videos. And that's a misdirection. There are some good YouTube videos about it, but they're about 1 out of 20. And so there's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. So he kind of encouraged people to take kind of a bad look of strange allegations of the event. Now, what is of note for this is that he did not ask the audience, was anyone else here affected by the Isla Vista event? Was anyone else here present a witness to the event? Has anyone else here lost someone in the Isla Vista event? He didn't ask that, which someone may naturally do in a city that's directly adjacent, to an alleged tragedy. Of note on the audience, I believe also, is aside from myself and my guest, and 2 other women, I believe, sitting up front, there was no one in the age range of, say, 20 to 45. Meaning, there were no UCSB or SBCC students that I could see in attendance in the theater. I watched, before the lights went down when they came back up. So, that to me is just another indication, hello, no one was really affected by this. And no one cares. And that's why, it's very funny, the messaging keeps coming back is, what do we have to do to get people fired up? Well, if a real event ever happens, people might be actually, whoa. But as it is, you have a few crisis actors that just take over the airwaves. So anyway, that being said, so I really want to encourage you in thinking about this film, whether you've already seen it or you plan to see it. Watch how they portray human grief, because this is a wonderful way that our intuition can inform us about these events. Tears in grief and tragedy, that's the normal. That's the norm. With these high profile cases, it becomes absent. You have people pretend to get choked up, they might sniffle, they might wipe away a tear that isn't there. And you see this in this movie. How many times do you think in this movie you see people cry? Take a guess. One. It's a nameless woman in a crowd. I believe it was a picture of a crowd at the Isla Vista, UC Santa Barbara, where they had a memorial. And so this is a woman that actually believes it's real, and she's reacting the way a normal human being does when something horrible happens. You cry. You never see this in this movie. There are a few people, the mother and relative of Jessie Gotti, I believe her name is. Let me find that name real quick. Jessie Gotti, her mom, Sandy Phillips, gets a little close, and you see her, feigning, to cry, and then the camera cuts away. In just the moment when you would imagine the director might say, we need to hold this shot. So, we can think of this movie in terms of a great example of controlled opposition. And what that means is the way that this whole discourse and debate about guns and Second Amendment rights and the NRA, believe me, if the NRA really cares about guns or the rule of law or any sort of actual democratic virtue, they could, within 5 minutes, completely open up this conversation. They have the money, they have the staffing, they do not have the willpower. They control the parameters of the discussion. So they're a foil. They set up movies like this and allow politicians to become angry at this person or this group of people that are actually working for them. So if you're a member of the NRA and that confuses you, what I just said, please look into Sandy Hook and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. So there were two or three people in here that were kind of new to me, and so I'm going to just sidestep and focus on the cases of Terrell Bosley, who was said to have been shot in Chicago, and his mom is featured in the film as an activist. The story of Jessie Gotti, a woman who was allegedly killed in the Aurora Batman movie theater, which was also a faked event. And we're also right now going to look at Father Pfleger of Chicago, and he made quite some airtime in this, and that was surprising to me. Now, he's an interesting character, let me tell you. Let me just tell you about this fella. So he's made a big name for himself in the, gun control debate. And so he's had 3 adopted sons. Lamar, who, nothing too notable to say about him. You also have Jarvis Franklin. It's alleged that he was killed in Chicago, just near St. Sabina Church, which is where Father Pfleger pastors, on May 30th, 1998. Now, what's very interesting is that I could find no searching on Google, even when I did a restricted for the time period, nothing about it in reporting. Now, please let me know in comments if you find anything. But there was no news releases about this shooting, which was said to have been a crossfire or an accidental shooting between gang fights, and he was caught up in the fray. So, in the Wikipedia page of Father Flager, it mentions that he was killed. And you look at the citation, and it goes into an interview with Father Flager, a personal biography, where he says it. That's it. You would think that Wikipedia would want to cite an official statement of it from somewhere. Now, the closest... now, interesting, I looked up the Social Security Death Index, and I could find no entry for Jarvis Franklin, or variations on that name. Jarvis Franklin Flager, Jarvis Flager. The most that we get as far as reporting on it is already in 1999, when his brother Barante Sims was interviewed about he was a successful basketball player, I believe. So in discussing his athletics, he mentions it offhand and just says, my brother Jarvis was a street tough, killed in a gang fight. And then there's in that 1999 again, we have a news report about Father Flager in Chicago. He's consoling young school children friends of a child who had been allegedly shot. And the article says he's going to the school consoling children, but it does not mention, and he doesn't mention, that he was affected by gun violence. That would seem a natural fit. So in the two references of it, there's, in all these decades, less than half a dozen that I can find. Now, help me out on that. If there are, let me know. But again, that is hard to explain with the no Social Security Death Index that I could find. So let's talk about Barante Sims, another adopted son of Father Flager. Now this story, if it doesn't scream something strange is going on here. So at a U.S. Air Force base in Korea, it is said that a Korean woman of the name Chong Chong Cha had a child, an illegitimate child, with a black U.S. Air Force member. So she's raising this child. She reads a Reader's Digest article about Father Flager. She goes to a Catholic missionary there and says, I want to give my son, because of the cultural shame, I want to give my son to Father Flager. Okay? So he calls up Father Flager and says, hey, we got this kid. Can you find someone to adopt him? Now, this is the official story as it goes. Father Flager. I was really talking close to the camera, wasn't I? Sorry. So Father Flager says, I looked for families and couldn't find anyone willing to adopt a child. So, he just talked to a couple people, I don't know. And he said, I couldn't find anybody, so I called up the missionary to let him know I couldn't find anybody, but it was too late. Barante was already on a plane. What's the time frame of that story? So anyway, Barante's on an airplane now. As the story goes, Father Flager shows up and he picks... Barante is alone at the airport. The missionary dropped him off in Chicago airport, maybe O'Hare, didn't say, and left. Left his kid unattended. And Father Flager shows up and he says, quote, I couldn't say no. And now you're thinking to yourself, Eric, this woman gave up because of cultural shame, this child. How old was he, Eric? 1? 2? Had she raised the child for a couple of months? He was 13. At some point, Barante Sims is sent on a plane with a missionary who leaves him alone in Chicago, with a pastor he's never met. So, that's Father Flager for you. Interesting cat. So, let's talk about Jessie Gotti. Now, in the story, they interview her mom quite a bit. And so this is the story of how it goes with her. It said that she had miraculously survived a shooting in Toronto's Eaton Centre. So, here's the story. She's an up-and-coming, she's interested in athletics. Her dad had been a very successful athlete. He had been in Sports Illustrated when he was a kid. And so she takes a trip up to Toronto. She's in the Eaton Centre mall. And she says, now this is recorded on her Twitter, where her Twitter feed is still available. Jessie Gotti, or Jessie Redfield, she goes by for her Twitter. You can look it up. And she's, tweeting very mundane, innocuous things, hockey and all stuff like that. And then there's maybe 3 tweets about this shocking shooting that she narrowly escaped. A couple of links to her blog. And then she goes right back to hockey tweets. Now this is the way it goes. In these faked shootings, people just brush it off. They're never affected. Gosh, wow, I might, go out there and tearlessly talk about gun control, but that's it. Nothing in my life really changes. And the link to her blog, people say she was a blogger. Well, that blog had 2 entry posts. One was, I think, about hockey, and then one was a brief description of the event as she narrowly escaped. Now, as her story goes, this is the official story. And this is what I think is very important. Look at the details. We have this grand architecture of this, of how we talk about, all these mass shootings in America and guns and stuff. But the devil's in the details. Come back down. What are they really talking about? And you see stories like this. In her telling of it, she's at the mall and she buys a greasy hamburger and a patin, a buta. I don't know, I think it's a French thing for a dessert. Forgive me. And she says her receipt was 6:20 p.m. She rushed through her meal and then decided to get some fresh air. At which point she's now outside and people begin coming out of the mall and she sees police cars driving up and she says, I thought someone had had a heart attack. And then I come to realize that there had been a shooting inside. The shooting occurred at 6:23 and she points that out. That the shooting happened exactly where she had been eating her greasy hamburger. So she receives the receipt for her greasy hamburger at 6:20. She eats at least some of it. She says she rushes through her meal. So whether she ate all of it or some of it. And then she walked away at such a distance that she was now unable to determine that the gunshots were occurring behind her. And then she couldn't piece it together when police cars arrive and people are exiting the mall. I would assume that people exiting the mall would be saying, help, there is a person shooting inside, or something to that effect. She had to piece it together. What? What's going on here? Was this a heart attack, guys? Huh? So, that shooting occurred, allegedly, June 2nd, 2012. June 2nd, 2012. On July 20th, she attends the midnight showing of a Batman movie and is then killed. Different country, just over a month later, and she's killed. She's trying to enjoy Batman movie, and she's killed. Now back in that month before, month and a half, when she's tweeting about the Eaton Centre in Toronto, in the few tweets that she has. Do you want to bet that she tweeted about Batman? Now, I don't know if you're a betting person. So this was a friendly wager. Before this woman is killed watching Batman, and she's narrowly escaped a mass shooting in Canada on that day, did she tweet about Batman? Yep, she did. She said a man was outside dressed as Batman. Life is filled with strange coincidences, isn't it? So, now Terrell Bosley, there's not a lot on him. It was said that he was a musician and he had been at the Light of Zion Church. The story, for whatever reason, the story's a little bit foggy on why he was outside of the building at the time. But it was a random drive-by, no motive, and he was shot in the arm. And he came inside, and the people inside the foyer, right inside, hadn't realized there had been a shooting. So again, it's very interesting. The sound of gunfire does not seem to carry very well in some of these stories. And his girlfriend Alexa Faison was inside. And I find no woman of that name corresponding to her age through various people searches. So it could have been that the reporting was incorrect on her. I believe they said she was 16 at the time, so I looked around. If you know anything on that one, feel free to let me know. So that's one of those to be determined stories. So in all of this, again, is it a movie that's worthwhile to watch? Sure. It does help you, I believe, if you watch it with your intuition intact. Watch how these people talk about these things. You have the father of Christopher Martinez in Isla Vista. I believe just a month later, casually driving around in Christopher's car around UCSB, very composed, getting ready for his activism work and stuff. This is a month later. This is absolutely bizarre, I think. Let's talk about Jessie Gotti and her brother, Jordan. So he lives in Texas. And he had written, on the night of the shooting, he got a message at 2:15. So he flies up, and in his his quote about that is, very. Now he's a firefighter EMT, it said, so he might be very objective and hard to ruffle his feathers. But he said his quote was that he wrote, it was 02:15 Central Standard Time. At this time, I do not have confirmation that she is alive or dead. End quote, about his sister. So he flies up from Texas to Aurora, Colorado. Same day, CNN is able to post an interview with her brother, Jordan Gotti, with Anderson Cooper, and he is tearless and composed. The same day. So you had a sleepless night learning that your sister died. You just got off an airplane and now you're giving an interview to CNN. Tearless, composed, yeah, I'm talking about my sister. She was a nice person. She was a good person, filled with, like he's talking about a soup. A good soup. Not a soup that he sent back and he's upset about it. He's talking about, yeah, it was good, it was a chicken noodle and it was good. They make a mockery of grief, and that is very sad. Now, believe me, don't lose sight of the forest for the trees in all of this. It's not about guns. It's not about the Second Amendment. And it's not just about faked shooting events. Follow the implications of what I'm telling you. And you'll see this is really, really a depth of deceit that affects our whole culture. I hope your day has been great. Thanks for spending this time with me. 25 minutes. Wow, I got to work on that. I'm a very slow talker. I apologize. I'm gonna have some links down below. Check them out. Of course, we need we need collegiality in this. We need collaboration. So if you have any information that will help me out, let me know. I'd love to check it out. I need your help. We can do this together, right? Have a great day. All right.